When you get into a car with a stranger, you trust they'll take you where you asked to go. But what if they already knew your name, your secrets, and exactly where you'll never return from? Rain slashed against the windshield as I stood alone on the sidewalk, clutching my phone. Midnight had turned the city into a hollowed-out skeleton of itself. Empty streets, flickering neon signs, stray cats scattering into shadows. My Uber notification buzzed. A black sedan, sleek and dripping with rainwater, pulled up to the curb. I stepped inside without thinking twice. The car smelled faintly of something sweet, almost like flowers, but underneath there was something sour, something rotten. The driver wore a baseball cap, low over his face. His hands gripped the steering wheel tight enough that his knuckles turned white. No greetings, just a glance through the rear-view mirror, a long, heavy look, before we pulled away from the curb. The ride started normally, quiet, almost comforting, but then he spoke. "So Emily," he said in a low voice, "heading back to 4726 Oakmont Lane, right? Near the old church." I froze. I hadn't put my full address in the app. I'd selected the nearby intersection instead. A safer habit, one my friends had always insisted on. "Yeah," I replied, voice uncertain. "How do you know the church?" He chuckled, a deep, guttural sound that made my skin crawl. "I grew up around there. Used to play hide and seek in that graveyard behind it." I hadn't mentioned the church to anyone. How did he know it was behind my street? The driver missed a turn for Oakmont Lane. I think you missed." He cut me off. "Shortcut. Trust me," he said, but the streets grew narrower, darker. Houses thinned out, replaced by empty lots and sagging power lines. The rain seemed heavier here, almost oily, blurring the world into streaks of black and gray. I gripped my bag tighter, heart pounding. My phone buzzed, but when I looked, the screen was black. No signal, no Wi-Fi. I tried the door handle discreetly. It didn't budge. Panic clawed at my throat. I reached forward. "Hey, can you unlock the doors?" Another glance through the rear-view mirror. But this time, his eyes were fully visible, wide, bloodshot, smiling too much. He hit the lock button with an exaggerated press, the click of the locks ringing louder than it should have. "Can't have you falling out now, can we?" he said, voice syrupy sweet. I pressed my back against the seat, pulse thundering. I needed to think, fast. He started talking again, but not casual small talk. No, he talked about my life. "Your dog, Max, he's cute. Little guy barks too much, though, doesn't he?" I hadn't posted about Max since last year. Then he mentioned my sister, my old job at the coffee shop, even the scar on my knee from a fall when I was 8. I stared at the back of his head, horror blooming in my chest. This wasn't random. He had been watching me for a long time, and I was trapped in the dark with him. The car slowed to a crawl. We weren't near Oakmont anymore. Ahead, the street dead-ended into a dense patch of woods, mist curling between skeletal trees. The driver shifted in his seat, cracking his neck loudly. He turned around, fully now, and smiled. "No turning back now," he whispered. The rain drummed harder, a frantic heartbeat against the car's roof. I realized, too late, that no one knew where I was. No one would hear me scream out here. The engine idled in the mist, rumbling like a hungry animal. I tried to make myself small, unseen. Maybe he'd forget I was there. No such luck. The driver stepped out, the car door creaking open and slamming shut. His boots splashed in the puddles as he circled around to my side. I dove for the opposite door, jamming my fingers against the handle. Locked. Solid. A hand pounded on the window. "Out," he growled. In the distance, the trees whispered and shifted as if waiting for me. I kicked the door as hard as I could, over and over, until something inside cracked. The door swung open slightly, enough for me to wedge myself out. I hit the ground hard and scrambled up, running into the woods without looking back. Branches clawed at my clothes, cold mud sucked at my shoes. Behind me, the driver's heavy footsteps thundered closer, his voice calling out in a mocking sing-song. "Emily, you can't hide from me. I know you." Every breath burned my lungs. Every heartbeat was a countdown. After what felt like forever, the trees broke apart into a small clearing. In the center stood an old house. No, more shack, sagging under its own weight, the windows dark and shattered. I didn't care what it was. It was shelter. I bolted toward it, slipping and falling into mud once, knees scraping raw. Behind me, I could hear him slowing down, laughing under his breath, as if he knew there was nowhere left to go. I crashed through the front door, slamming it shut, and pressed my back against it, gasping. Inside, it was dark and outside. Silent. The air reeked of mold, old wood, and something metallic. As my eyes adjusted, I realized the house wasn't empty. Faint breathing, not my own, came from the darkness. Shapes moved in the corners, too tall, too still. I stumbled back, stepping onto something soft. I looked down and bit back a scream. A pile of tattered clothes, shoes, belongings. Someone had been here before me, maybe lots of someone's. The breathing grew louder, and then I saw eyes, dozens of them glinting from the shadows, watching, waiting. The front door rattled violently. He was outside, testing it, chuckling to himself. I backed away from the door, scanning the inside for an escape. There at the back, a rotted staircase leading down into blackness. A basement. The door burst inward with a splintering crack, and he stepped in, soaked from the rain, eyes glittering with triumph. I had no choice. I ran for the basement and threw myself down the stairs, slipping and tumbling into the darkness below. The door above slammed shut. I was trapped again, this time underground. The basement walls seemed alive, breathing in time with my panicked gasps. Water dripped from unseen pipes, splashing into puddles. Faint voices whispered from the dark, names, pleas, cries. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to vanish, but something cold and slimy brushed against my ankle. I snapped my head down. A hand, a pale, broken hand, reaching out from a gap in the wall. It was trying to pull me in. Upstairs, the driver's heavy footsteps started descending the creaking stairs. There was nowhere left to run. The basement swallowed me in darkness, suffocating and thick. Above, his boots scraped against the stairs, slow and deliberate. I tried to find an escape, feeling blindly along the crumbling walls, but they pulsed under my fingertips, warm, almost breathing. It wasn't stone. It wasn't wood. I stumbled backward as the hand from the wall gripped tighter around my ankle, ice cold and desperate. A voice, cracked and broken, hissed from behind the wall. Don't let him find you down here. I froze, heart hammering. He was already here. Desperation clawed at me. I kicked free from the wall's hand and darted along the far side of the basement. My hand found a seam, a hidden door, half rotted and covered in mold. I heaved it open just enough to slip inside, pulling it shut behind me. Inside, the air was colder, heavier. The narrow space beyond the door was lined with cages. Rusted iron bars bent and broken. Inside them were scraps of clothing, gnawed bones, and stains I didn't want to think about. The flashlight beam from upstairs swept over the basement, missing my hiding spot by inches. He was hunting, patient, savoring the fear. As I backed deeper into the room, a whisper caught my ear. Take one. Take one. Something metallic bumped my foot. A heavy iron key. I bent to pick it up, hands trembling. Each key was carved with strange markings, symbols that pulsed faintly in the gloom. Somewhere behind me, something shifted inside the cages. A shape, a hunched, thin figure with glowing eyes, stirred and pressed against the bars. I stumbled back in terror, but the whisper came again, insistent. Take one, before he does. I pocketed the keys, not knowing why, only that I had to. I slipped out from the hidden room, the keys heavy in my pocket, moving quietly along the basement wall. Maybe if I could find another stairway, another way up. The beam of a flashlight pinned me in place. He was standing across the room, grinning. There you are, he said softly. You belong here now. He lunged. I dodged, barely escaping his grasp, but he was faster. He caught the back of my jacket, yanking me off my feet. dragging me across the cold stone floor. I screamed, kicking and thrashing, but it only made him laugh harder. He dragged me towards something at the back of the basement, a large, rusted iron door embedded in the stone. Chains crisscrossed it, covered in ancient symbols. "You'll last longer than the others," he whispered. "Maybe you'll even survive the first night." I twisted, clawing at his arms, and somehow my hand brushed the keys in my pocket. I yanked one out blindly, shoving it into the nearest chain's lock. The chains rattled violently, the ground beneath us trembling. The driver froze, face blanching. "No," he screamed. "You don't know what you're doing." But it was too late. The lock clicked open. The door behind us groaned, splitting open into a void blacker than anything I'd ever seen. From it came the sound of 1,000 screams. The driver let go of me, backing away toward the stairs. His tough, mocking bravado shattered into raw terror. "You've killed us all," he whispered. From the open door, a shape slithered forward. Huge, sinuous, dragging itself into our reality. It wasn't human. It wasn't even alive, in any way I understood. Eyes open along its body, blinking wetly. Mouths gnashed and grinned. The driver turned to run, but the thing was faster. I didn't stay to watch. I bolted up the stairs, heart pounding, the screams echoing after me. I burst out into the night, the mist swallowing me whole. But deep inside, I knew I hadn't escaped. Not really. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. When I finally looked around, I realized where I was. The town square. But something was wrong. The streets were empty, deathly silent. No cars, no lights, no people. Shops stood frozen in time, their windows shattered inward, displays rotting. A thick, unnatural mist hugged the ground, curling like fingers around my ankles. A flickering lamppost buzzed and died, plunging me into deeper gloom. The town wasn't abandoned. It was hiding, and somewhere in the mist, something moved. I ducked into a narrow alley, heart pounding in my ears. The mist was thicker here, almost solid, muffling every sound except the frantic thudding of my heart. Halfway down the alley, I froze. On the far wall, something was written in smeared black sludge. "We see you." I turned slowly. High above, perched on the crumbling rooftop, was a figure, impossibly tall, hunched, wrapped in rags that shifted and flowed unnaturally. Dozens of gleaming eyes opened across its body, blinking wetly. It leaned forward, sniffing the air, grinning with too many mouths. It was searching for me, and it was getting closer. I ran, darting through side streets until I burst through the door of an old laundromat. Inside, a small group huddled in silence. A middle-aged woman clutching a crowbar, a teenager with tear-streaked cheeks, an old man muttering to himself. Their eyes snapped to me the moment I entered. "You brought it," the woman said, voice shaking. "You opened the door." I tried to explain, but they didn't want explanations. They only cared about survival. One of them shoved a dusty book into my hands. Old leather, strange symbols inked across brittle pages. "It can't be killed," the woman said, "but maybe you can send it back." Suddenly, the lights cut out. The laundromat was plunged into pitch-black silence. Then came the tapping, soft, rhythmic at first, then louder, harder. I turned toward the windows. Shapes pressed against the glass. Too many arms, faces too blurred to be human. The mist outside thickened, pressing against the building like a living thing. With a screeching wail, the glass cracked, and hands, gnarled and wrong, punched through. The survivors screamed, scattering. One was dragged out into the mist before I could even blink. I clutched the book tighter and ran. The book's pages fluttered wildly as I sprinted through the mist. Every street I turned down looked more decayed, more wrong. Finally, I spotted it through the haze, an old, crumbling church, its steeple half collapsed. The heavy doors groaned as I pushed them open. Inside, everything was warped, melting. The pews twisted into unrecognizable shapes, the stained glass windows weeping black tears. But on the altar, untouched, stood a single candle, burning with a pale blue flame. I stumbled toward it, the book clutched against my chest. Behind me, the creature shrieked, a sound that made the walls shudder and crack. I was running out of time. I dropped to my knees before the altar, flipping through the book's pages. The ritual was there, written in blood and symbols that hurt to look at. I read aloud, voice cracking. The air grew colder. The mist outside howled, rattling the stained glass. The candle's blue flame flared higher. The creature crashed into the church, its enormous form barely fitting through the doors. It screamed as the blue light seared its flesh, twisting and writhing, but it didn't die. It changed. Its body stretched, becoming more fluid, less real, a shapeless shadow that bled into mist. It was being forced back, but I knew, with a sickening certainty, that the ritual wasn't strong enough to banish it fully. I had only bought myself time, and it was furious. 2 days later, I was still on the run. I hadn't slept, barely eaten. Every shadow seemed alive. Every stranger's eyes lingered too long. I thought about leaving town, starting over somewhere no one knew me. I called a rideshare, not Uber this time, a random app one barely trusted. When the car pulled up, the driver looked normal. Plaid shirt, coffee in the cup holder, a friendly nod. I slid into the back seat. He tapped the mirror with one finger and smiled at me. Long night ahead, Emily? My blood ran cold. I never told him my name. The car turned onto a back road I didn't recognize. The trees pressed close, skeletal and black against the night sky. The driver hummed a tuneless song under his breath, tapping the steering wheel. I tried the door handle. It was locked. I glanced at my phone. No signal. You know, the driver said casually, "It's funny. You thought you closed the door. You thought it was over." I pressed myself against the door, heart pounding. "But doors don't close," he whispered. "They just wait to be opened again." Ahead, through the trees, I saw it, the old, rotting church. The mist oozed from its shattered windows like a living thing. He was taking me back. The driver pulled the car to a stop before the crumbling church. "Go on," he said. "They're waiting." When I didn't move, he grabbed the rearview mirror and twisted it toward me. For a second, I saw not my reflection, but another me, pale, hollow-eyed, blood trailing from my mouth. The reflection smiled. Behind her, the mist boiled and took shape. A hand, a mouth, endless eyes. The mirror cracked with a sharp snap. "Now they know your face," the driver whispered. "There's no going back." I staggered out of the car, the cold mist closing around me. The church doors were wide open now, gaping like a maw. Inside, the blue candle still burned, but now the flame was sickly green, sputtering. Figures moved inside, warped and wrong. Things that wore human skins like masks. And at the altar, towering and crowned with horns, stood the creature. It had grown, fed, learned. It turned its many eyes toward me and smiled. The driver stood beside it, head bowed in reverence. "Offerings always find their way home," he said. The book was still there, but now it pulsed like a living thing. Desperate, I lunged for it. As my fingers brushed the cover, the church trembled. The creature screamed, a sound like shattering bone and burning skin. The mist coiled upward, revealing the true door, not made of wood, but of something ancient, carved in writhing runes. It had been beneath the church all along. The book's pages flipped wildly. One phrase burned itself into my mind. "You can't close the door. You must choose who goes through." I understood with a clarity sharper than pain. Someone had to be taken. It was the only way to seal the door. And if no one volunteered, it would be me. The creature waited, its mouth salivating. Slowly, trembling, I turned to the driver. He smiled, as if he knew what was coming. "It's not personal," I whispered. I hurled the book at him. The runes flared with blinding light. He screamed as tendrils of mist wrapped around him, dragging him toward the door. The creature howled in rage, not at me, but at the loss of its chosen servant. The church shook violently. The mist recoiled. The door groaned, slowly closing. As the last glimpse of the monstrous world beyond vanished, I saw hundreds of eyes, still watching, still waiting. Then silence, I collapsed in the ruins. The night finally still, but I knew it wasn't truly over. Doors, once opened, never really shut. They just wait for the next knock. You can close your eyes, you can lock your doors, but some things already know your name, and sooner or later, they'll find you